Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something super fascinating. We're actually decoding real-world language feedback to uncover some pretty deep insights about work, stress, and just finding the right words. By looking at actual everyday conversational slip-ups and how they're corrected, we're going to learn not just how to speak a lot more eloquently, but really how to better weave actual downtime into our hyper-busy lives.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start off with small talk and vocabulary, then move into hobbies at work and school, tackle mental health and loneliness, figure out building realistic hobby routines, and wrap it all up with mastering the perfect answer. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Small talk and vocabulary.
Okay, so we all know that almost every great conversation kicks off with small talk, right? Usually it's about the weather or our daily routines. But getting the tiny nuances right is really the secret to sounding totally natural. Just think about this subtle shift. If you're trying to beat a chilly spring morning, you wear a light jacket, not a soft one. Soft just describes the texture, like a cozy blanket, whereas light tells us it's the exact perfect weight for the weather outside. Oh, and speaking of spring weather, if you want to complain about the air quality, you definitely want to point out the yellow dust covering your car, not a yellow flower. It's just these tiny adjustments that instantly elevate the way you communicate.
And honestly, it's wild how one little slip of the tongue can change your entire meaning. Like, imagine looking someone in the eye and saying, "Schools should encourage harvest." I mean, we want schools to give students time to relax and discover their interests, not literally send them out to the rice fields to cut grain.
These three words, hobby, habit, and harvest, are such common traps, and confusing them, well, it completely derails the topic. A hobby is something you do purely for fun in your free time. A habit is a routine behavior you do almost automatically, and a harvest, again, is gathering crops. So you always want to make sure you're nailing the pronunciation of hobby when you're talking about your downtime. You definitely don't want to accidentally tell your boss you spent your whole weekend harvesting.
It's kind of like when you're seeking help for your workout routine at the gym. You definitely want to look for an expert, because if you ask an expert for guidance, your dumbbells might literally end up on a shipping container heading overseas. It's a hilarious mix-up for sure, but it really hits the nail on the head as to why precise vocabulary is just absolutely essential.
Section 2. Hobbies at work and school.
All right, now that we're nicely warmed up and our vocab is sharp, let's pivot from linguistic traps to a much deeper societal issue, how we actually integrate downtime into our ridiculously busy lives. Before we figure out the ideal way to talk about this, I want you to really think about your own workplace or school for a second. Do they actively support your downtime? Do they honestly give you space to breathe? Or do they just constantly demand your uptime and endless productivity?
10 to 12. That is the deeply exhausting number of hours that Korean students often spend just studying at their desks every single day. And frankly, we know a ton of corporate employees are putting in well over 10 hours daily too. When you're dealing with that level of intense, chronic pressure, having an outlet isn't just a nice to have, it's an absolute non-negotiable necessity to stop yourself from completely burning out.
But here's the catch. How organizations actually introduce these outlets matters immensely. Look at the feedback on this phrasing. Post-pandemic, people value their personal lives more than ever. Younger workers, especially, really dislike forced company gatherings. So if a company truly wants to support hobbies, it needs to happen organically. And ideally, it should happen on weekdays, during working hours, not by demanding people give up their precious weekends.
The vital distinction in vocabulary here between encourage and force is basically everything. Organizations should absolutely encourage taking breaks. They should provide the opportunities. Maybe that's a walking program or a cool cultural outing. But participation, it has to remain strictly optional. It should never, ever be forced, because the exact moment a hobby becomes mandatory, it just morphs into more work.
Section 3. Mental health and loneliness.
Okay, this is where hobbies stop being just a fun little distraction and truly become a powerful tool for managing our overall well-being. Engaging in even a really simple activity provides a profoundly healthy break for your brain. Whether it's a walking program or joining a local reading club, these activities gently shift your focus away from those anxious looping thoughts. They reduce that heavy feeling of burden and create these safe, low-pressure environments to actually improve communication with our coworkers.
Notice how we need to refine the language around isolation. We don't say, care their loneness. We say, take care of their loneliness. And hobbies are quite literally perfect for this. Think about joining a book club. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Just a quiet place, a few chairs, and a shared interest. That simple, shared space can significantly dial down the deep sting of loneliness.
Because here's the harsh reality. True social connection isn't just about having thousands of online friends or sitting in a packed, noisy office. You can be surrounded by people and still feel entirely, devastatingly isolated. Meaningful relationships are formed over shared interests, not just physical proximity.
And if highly social hobbies just aren't your thing, solitary ones work absolute wonders too. Even taking a quick 10-minute break at work to listen to familiar, nostalgic songs from your teenage years can bring back great memories. It acts like a hard reset for your mind, completely changing the atmosphere in your head and lowering your stress levels almost instantly.
Section 4. Building realistic hobby routines.
Now, understanding the benefits of all these activities is great in theory, but let's talk about actionable strategies. How do we actually maintain a hobby in this hyper-busy modern world? Well, first, we have to acknowledge the very real barriers. Time and exhaustion are massive hurdles. I mean, when you get home after a 10-hour shift, you are beat. Furthermore, some unusual hobbies are incredible, but they're incredibly draining. Take cosplay, for example. It's wonderfully creative, but the intense prep, the expensive costumes, the elaborate makeup, it makes it incredibly tough to sustain on a daily basis.
So the real trick here is not to aim for perfection right out of the gate. You have to find a deeply personal motivation. Maybe your motivation is as simple as just wanting to fix that awful neck and back pain you get from sitting all day. Once you have that solid why, you make a small plan and you take tiny, super manageable steps that don't require heavy, expensive preparation.
You absolutely do not need to hire a professional trainer on day one. Look at the progression in how we express this, moving from a vague, kind of whiny, I don't like exercise, to a much more empowered, I did not like exercise before, but now I have a clear goal. Aiming to do simple bodyweight exercises or maybe some pull-ups for just 30 minutes, say, every other day, that is exactly how you turn a daunting, impossible-seeming task into a realistic, manageable routine.
Section 5. Mastering the perfect answer.
All right, let's bring all this vocabulary, nuance, and philosophy together. How do you actually structure an eloquent, high-level conversational response? If you're ever asked a complex question in a big meeting or a test, don't freeze up. Start strong. Acknowledge the question and state your main point right out of the gate. Then, anchor it with a real-world example, like how walking around the neighborhood while listening to music requires literally zero preparation. Finally, wrap it up with a thoughtful, balanced perspective.
Look at how layering in just a bit of nuanced thought totally elevates your response, going from a super basic, yes, hobbies can help, to adding that crucial, however, admitting that simply having social connections doesn't automatically erase loneliness. That transforms a basic, run-of-the-mill answer into a highly sophisticated, insightful, and frankly, memorable statement.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, pretty important question. Take a really hard look at how you manage your downtime. Are you truly resting, or are you just scrolling and adding to the endless noise? Consider making some space today for a quiet, meaningful connection, whether that's with someone else or honestly just with yourself. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.